So we start seeing that everybody is experiencing quite some issues here. We have a little bit of a demand challenge, right? Less sales, general drop in demand to be expected given the macroeconomic conditions. But also we see that we've kept our business, but we sort of struggle to bring new business on board. We see as well that somehow we start seeing too much diverse demand coming in our space, and that might be an issue. Our products might not be faring as successfully as before. We might need to rethink about them. And from an operational standpoint, we see challenges both with the volume and with the quality. Obviously, we see that diversity, and imagine this is just, I forced you to look at the top two in a sense. Somebody could have thought about looking at more than the top two, and then we would have had higher numbers coming along. But we just see that any shock out there, in a sense, is actually driving us to an interesting observation. So in circumstances of turbulence, in circumstances of change in general, in the broader business environment, we can see three distinctive challenges coming about, right? And challenges that affect our businesses almost immediately. In this pandemic case, it was so sudden and the impact was so big, and the interventions from the regulators were so big that the impact was felt almost immediately, but in certain other cases, the impact might take a bit of time. Nevertheless, the impact is always felt almost straightforward. And here what happens? First is we start seeing an impact on our offerings, right? And what I mean by this, with the products, the services that we have, start being unsuitable, unfit for the new conditions, or undesirable. So the shock is happening, and eventually we go down the path of not being able to sort of have the same steady stream of success, if you wish, with the products that you had. For example, we have a coffee store, we have a chain of grocery stores, we have a service business like a dental business and so on, practice and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, what we see is we need to modify the customer journey and how we interact with the customers, because simply enough, we cannot contain the same amount of people in the shop. They need to follow arrows as they move around. They need to not come close to each other. We need to create all those conditions. So we need to modify somehow the offering, the experience that we're creating. That's the first thing. The second thing is what you guys have rated the highest, which is the effect on the market, right, on the consumers. So the customers and our clients, the who of our business, as opposed to the what of our business that we talked about before, start suffering from that. For example, the positive side of the COVID was digital companies, in certain instances, they saw a spike on their demand for digital services because all of us, the rest of us, have gone down the path of not being able to operate in the physical space as before, and we had to operate in the virtual space. And guess what? This has happened while they were not prepared necessarily for such a big spike of the demand, a classic situation of hyper growth, if you wish, that happens very fast. And they had to sort of rethink about how do they segment the customers, how do they adapt the products to the market, what kind of markets they're catering first to, what kind of priorities they give. Again, we're getting impacted. We need to understand what's going on. And the third one is the way we do the business, the how of our business, the business model, in a sense, the engine, if you wish, of our businesses, where essentially we need to rethink about many things, starting by rejigging the processes to meet the demand, if at all, rejigging the schedules and who works and who doesn't work if we have absenteeism issues, being able to strike new partnerships and source for different suppliers, because the one supplier that we trusted and we worked with was not able to get us the right quality or the right amount of products on time, and we ended up experiencing delays and therefore getting hurt. So for different reasons out there, what we ends up happening is we start rejigging the way we do business, right? Now, interestingly enough, we can do those on a knee-jerk reaction standpoint. We can do those by really reacting to what exactly we were supposed to sort of achieve, right? And the hit that we're getting. But the reality is that these challenges and the changes that happen start actually eroding a basic fundamental enabler that has kept us healthy and well-performing all this time. And that is the fact that our sales, our profits were based on some kind of what people would call a competitive advantage that we had. The why question, as I would like to put it, why people come to us, why people prefer our product, why people are loyal to our services, and so on and so forth. So this thing is eroding, which implicitly starts putting a question of whether the performance is going to be kept, right? So shock is happening out there. Let's recap on the observation. A shock is happening, a change is happening. We have experienced one of the worst shocks because it's a natural disaster, so to speak, through the pandemic. And you see that happening every now and then. But there's more milder shocks that still change the business landscape. New technologies all of a sudden coming on board. New consumer shifts in terms of how consumers are acting and behaving. New regulatory changes. Brexit is another example here. New competitors entering the market. So shocks are happening, and in our effort to sort of sustain our performance as we start seeing the performance going down, right? We are trying, and we start to understand how we can change what we have as levers in our hands to really bring back the performance. So the shock is happening. What used to be offered is not sufficient anymore. That erodes the performance. Natural question, rhetoric question, what do we do? Well, we go back, in a sense, to what we were supposed to be controlling, which is our offerings, whom do we talk to, the customers that we serve, how we're doing the business model, and in an effort to sort of restore, in an effort to keep the business going, or in an effort, if the shock was positive, lots of demand, to be able to recoup the demand and the growth impact. Hold on to this observation. And hold on to this observation because what we just went through here is a very fundamental, quote unquote, discovery, which is getting lost by many of the leadership teams that we're interacting through the Entrepreneurship Center programs repeatedly. The fact that at the core of any effort to sustain performance post the pandemic or to grow our business in different epochs where we have the capacity to sort of go forward for growth, in any of those cases, what lies at the core is a few decisions that we make with respect to those three key blocks. And those three key blocks, which I've just thrown out at you randomly in a sense, is nothing different but a way to start conceptualizing and thinking about our strategy. So in a sense, there is a key insight here. And it's a fundamental insight because it underpins a lot of the discussions and the support that we're offering to different companies through the interventions and the programs that we have in place. In order to be able to recover or sustain or grow our performance, right? Fundamentally, at the very center of all this effort lies a capability to adapt what people would call our strategic position, which essentially I have indirectly defined with you over the last few moments as answering to three very fundamental questions for our business. The first one is the what, the offering part. What do I offer? Shock has happened. Used to offer X. Do I keep offering the X or do I need to go into a different offering called Y? Shock is happening. Customers seem to be shifting in different behaviors. Do I serve the same customers with some kind of a different offerings or do I actually go and seek additional markets? That's the who question, the market question. And those two, by the way, for those of us who are coming from earlier stage businesses, reflect what people would call a product market fit situation, a market and opportunity sort of meetup, a position which defines the core of what it is that we offer in a business. And finally, the third question is the how question. So how are we able to deliver the value to the who, to the market, through the what, through the offerings? And that responds to the fact that we might be requiring special capabilities, experts to be in place, certain revenue and pricing models, the capacity to acquire or the capacity to partner with specific suppliers and supplier services, cost and costing and how we understand cost, all those different elements. So in a sense, strategy, the strategic position that we have, the decisions that we make about the strategic decision that we have, lie at the core of any effort to respond to change, of any effort to make change happen in our organization, to drive the performance higher, to sustain our performance, or to recoup our performance. Now, all those are good and well, but there is one additional element with which we're interacting through the choices that we make in those what, who, how questions, which is the eventual why question. We can respond in many ways by defining offerings, by defining markets, by defining business models. But the reality is that those responses have to be making sense out there in the market as a differentiated why in the eyes of the customer. So the customer needs to be able to actually see some kind of an advantage into coming to us as opposed to going to somebody else, right? So again, the why might be driving some of those answers. Some of those answers might be driving a new why. Those two are interacting, but in the essence, the four elements make us actually really discuss about a sustainable competitive position, okay? Now, this is not an easy task. It's good to recognize that resilience and growth starts with strategy, and that's a key punchline that we're creating in any intervention and any discussion that we have with businesses such as yourselves through the Entrepreneurship Center programs and support that we offer. But the reality is that that's not an easy task. There's good news, which is there's not one single strategy that survives out there. So thank God that we're not after the one single big thing, right? But the reality is that there's so many parameters that we need to jig them around, and the essence of strategy is selecting one of those positions. So we need to make sense about the what, the who, and the how in a way that represents us. Now, the bad news is that this has to be clear and to articulate a clear competitive advantage. Otherwise, we're not going to go far. And what you see often is that that clarity is not in place. Why? Because that clarity implies difficult choices. That's what makes a leadership team a challenging task to undertake, right? The leader's position. The fact that difficult choices have to be made with respect to which products and how many products are we going to be offering? Are we going to be serving everyone as our customer, or should we make choices and segment the customers? Are we going to be applying the same pricing model to everyone, or should we be thinking about pricing differently? Should we actually work with all the suppliers that are available out there and hedge, or should we work with one supplier and make the best quality product input for our businesses? All those are difficult choices, and there's no obvious answers, and that's what makes strategy really difficult. But the incapacity, the impossibility of answering those questions is really what drives, in the end of the day, strategic failure. And if there would be one message that I would like to give back to everyone since we're having this discussion today, that message would relate to the fact that we need to be able, given the new conditions, to go forward with sometimes difficult decisions. Otherwise, we expect the system to sort of define the decisions and the answers for us, and that's too late. Because those answers are going to be ad hoc, and those answers might not even make sense from a why standpoint. So it's important to really think about these decisions. Not only it's important to think about these decisions, but in a sense, success, whatever you define as success, be it that right now success looks like resilience, or be it that right now success looks like sustaining our business or even growing our business, comes from crafting a distinctive such position, right? Of being able to think through the answers that we give to the what, the who, and the hows in a way that make us distinctively respond to the why question vis-a-vis our customers, to the competitive advantage that we have. Okay, so I hope that we're going down that message, because it's an important message. It sometimes sounds like an obvious message to most of us, but it's not as obvious in terms of execution. This is an extremely difficult task to undertake, redefining our strategy and our strategic position to make sense, be clear, and be competitively offering us an advantage, okay? So what does this really mean for us? Let's try to put it in more tangible terms, right? The change happens in the environment. We start seeing the performance eroding or the performance not increasing in a sense. And if we are at the earlier stages, that might imply that we need to look at the what and the who repeatedly and start, again, do what we've done in the past to get here, which is pivot our idea, adapt our ideas, try different of those what who's, and hopefully at some point, if we land in a successful new what who product market fit, then go forward and start defining the how. If we're a more larger business, a more mature business, that might imply that we need to be thinking about our current portfolio that describes the what and the who, several products, several customer segments, and sometimes make decisions that might be focusing that portfolio. Do we really need to keep operating with that particular segment given the fact that it costs way too much to offer our offering to that segment and we don't have that many sales? Or should we cut it out and resume and reallocate the resources in the other segments? Or maybe we should think about increasing our reach to different markets, or maybe introducing a new product because the old product is not digitally enabled, is not COVID free, is not having all these issues that would relate to the customer today. So we will adapt and rethink and rationalize the product market position, but primarily what we need to do is think about the current how and optimize it and adapt it at some level, right? And that's something that differentiates the larger firms, the fact that they need to adapt that existing how that they have versus the earlier stage companies that have the flexibility and difficulty at the same time of really being able to sort of define and develop a new how. If this is the case, then to do this, what we need to sort of achieve is start thinking in a more structured way. This is really what underpins the efforts and the support that we're trying to offer through the Entrepreneurship Center. And I'll tell you a bit more in a few slides about those efforts in a more systematic way. But before that, I would like to sort of clarify where I think the value comes in those engagements for business leaders such as yourselves. It's the fact that that focused and structured thinking allows us to be able to offer answers to the challenges that we have at two different levels. First, being able to even take the challenge, which is a hairball, right? It's something extremely complex, and take it apart and diagnose the challenge with respect to the different dimensions that we've just described. There's businesses where the challenge is going to be much more relating to we need to find new customers to really offer the value proposition that we have. There's going to be businesses where actually catering to the new customers might not be the real issue. The demand is almost there. If we can meet the demand, the problem is going to be inside the house, right? The problem is going to be with our engineers or with our staff, with our clerks who are less available than before, and we need to be rethinking of automation, or we need to be rethinking about how do we get them to work together more effectively to deliver the same productive output. These are different challenges. It's important that we dimensionalize those challenges and we're able actually to look at them one by one. The second is use the same structural ways, the same framework, and I'm just showing you in the little slide one of the frameworks that we use to discuss exactly this issue, the strategic position, right, that each one of us is facing, and address the challenge. So analyze what's going wrong with our processes. Where is really the big issue? How can we start generating new ways of, creative ways of putting the processes together? How can we adapt, in a sense, our current position in a way that it will drive a new strategic advantage, right? A new strategic position that gives us a new strategic advantage. So the aspired result, in a sense, is to restore and improve the performance in this. And we're doing that in a structured way. And I think that's something that's oftentimes missed, both by the leaders themselves, but also by their top lieutenants, the leadership teams that we have. Because if we are following a way, a structured way, a focused way of thinking around those challenges, then obviously what we can do is then we have enough knowledge internally, because you know your businesses better than anybody else. You're able to take this knowledge, put it in the right boxes, and start generating value, typically for successful business leaders such as yourselves. Not only that, but once we have diagnosed these original challenges that we have, once we started generating new thinking, then we can actually start working towards this new strategic position that will ensure either the resilience or sustainability and growth, right? The fact that we will keep our business going. And again, within the Cambridge Judge Business School and the Entrepreneurship Center here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to offer structured steps, structured approaches towards this end. I'm sharing with you yet one of the other frameworks, one of the other tools that we spend time with leadership teams such as yourselves, really trying to understand three key things once we have gone through the original discussion that you saw before. First is, can we question somehow the competitiveness of the current strategic offering? Where are you really losing value? Where are you really not able to meet successfully the targets and the objectives that you've set? And there is some other frameworks that we use for this first question. But once we get to understand where the weak points are, when we start to understand where is the weak link into this offering that we have for our businesses and performance, then we can start doing the following, right? We can start generating options. We can start understanding where these options exist within our organization. Is it within our operations? Is it because we can exploit new marketing channels? Is it because we can actually redefine slightly some of the features of our products, of our services, include small additions to that that will make the customer experience something drastically better and be willing to come back and give us their nice money for this? So some creativity will have to be there in that respect, given that you understand your businesses, as I said before. And finally, selecting a path that's going to restore back to performance and growth, which means define an actual plan with specific steps, with roles that are allocated to specific individuals in the organization, potentially with key performance metrics that will get us back to where we want to be. In a sense, what structure does is not taking away the uncertainty and the challenge that you're facing. It's making the uncertainty and the challenge visible enough so that individuals such as yourselves who have successfully done business before are able to think calmly and address those challenges and really move forward. Why is this important? Because oftentimes the daily bugging of the business, the smaller details that are coming our way are impairing our vision with respect to the bigger picture, with respect to where do we want to end up with. And that's where the weakness in the current, potentially ad hoc way of looking at strategy lies, right? In existing cookie cutter solutions that somebody can promise you that they can give you for your business. In books and textbooks that exist out there that have the ways by which successful digital strategies exist and work. Those are interesting thoughts that could instigate and inspire business leaders such as yourselves. But unless we go into the problem with a somewhat structured thinking and approach, we will not be able to get out of it as much value as we can. And that's exactly where we're coming in, trying to sort of support as much as we can the efforts that you guys are undertaking. Now, having said this, the way we're doing this is through two distinctive interventions. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes describing them. That's really my plan. I'm not planning to bore you more with discussions of the type that we could have into much more detail within a different context, but give you just a flavor, as I did, of how we're thinking here at the Judge Business School. And then we can hopefully open up for questions that you might be having. And I'll introduce also a bit my colleagues in all this effort that you can reach out to me or them, and really we can engage into creative discussions. So the first program, which has been running for 4 or 5 years now through multiple cohorts, and it's I would say the premium product that we're offering out there, is this notion of the Strategic Business Growth Program. An almost 4-month intervention where we essentially want to take business leaders and their leadership teams, and we insist that it has to be the entire team that comes to the course. And I'll tell you why in just a second, through a journey of different modules where we're willing to sit down, give you knowledge, give you structured ways of thinking, but primarily work with you with an amazing team of business coaches surrounding myself and other faculty members here at the Judge Business School that will look into your strategic challenges. We will start with strategy, as I said today, because we fundamentally believe that this is where you need to be starting. Look at the new strategic position that you want to be developing, and then help you think about the operationalization of this decision, which means the changes that you need to be doing with respect to your business model and the changes that you need to be doing with respect to your operations, while keeping a risk register around this process and making sure that you can achieve it with the least possible negative outcomes. So helping you really think, define, and start operating a growth plan. And the second part of knowledge that we're giving there is what people would call, wrongly so, if you ask me, the softer type of knowledge, which is not very soft. How do you lead such an effort? How do you take the rest of the people with you? Being a leader means that you have to create followership and get everyone to be inspired by your paradigm, by your vision, by your targets, and really take them through a very difficult journey that, for better or worse, you have to be taking your company through, and yourselves, because it's going to be a difficult journey. We all know that. We have been there. But at the same time, being able to do that with the best possible support for your people and the best possible instigation of their efforts and their support for your outcome, that's extremely important. The second discussion that we're having is how can you ensure that this challenge happens so that it's properly resourced, or at least knowing what the resource challenges you will have are. How do we understand where our cash flow problems exist? How do we understand different ways of financing potentially those efforts? We want to be offering some help with respect to that as well. This is happening over 4 months, and this is happening over 3 two-day modules where we're trying also to engage virtually currently, but also face-to-face as we did before the pandemic, and hopefully we're going to be doing in the rest of 2020 or 2021 to be more specific. We're trying to engage several leaders of you to also develop this peer-to-peer learning camaraderie, which is important so that we can learn from each other. And the key ingredient that starts playing in those cases is the following. We start understanding that the growth problems that we have rarely are specific technological issues that we might be facing. You're extremely good and you're extremely effective at solving those because you know your businesses. And I mean that when I say it. But the reality is the problems that we face at that stage are management problems. And they don't have particular technological color or particular industrial color. In other words, we don't have to talk only to companies that are from our own industry sector to tell them what the challenges we face are. Sometimes, and you'll be impressed, in such a context, you can learn from the peers much more effectively, from people, other CEOs, other managing directors, other VPs and leadership members that have been there before you, that have actually challenged themselves with similar questions, that have faced the same wall that you're now facing, thinking that it's impossible to jump over that. And they did. So it's extremely important to sort of preserve also that context and get you a member as part of this program of an alumni, broader alumni of many companies that have gone through this program before. Now, last but not least is the fact that we're trying through such a program to really instigate alignment. I promised you that I would say why we believe in the teams. One of the biggest challenges that we've seen in the past, and we've actually tried to respond to the market need with respect to this, is the fact that in the past, a leader comes to a program, gets great ideas, goes Monday morning back into the office and starts rejigging everybody's schedules and everybody's ideas based on the amazing input that he had. But because nobody else had the same amazing input, it ends up being a, oh my gosh, what are we going to do to just stop this slur of changes that's happening because she is very excited. Instead, we want to bring you on board as well as leadership team members so that we create here, with the effort of working on your challenges with the coaches and with the faculty throughout the program, the alignment that you need so that when you go back Monday morning, there's no need to rejig everybody's schedule. Everybody's schedule is already rejigged from here to be executing on the growth opportunities and the growth options that you have. The program has been going out there for quite some time, and the results have been very good. And we have to be thinking about the fact that we have quite some diversity in this program. So first, there's been quite some impact on leadership thinking. Most of the participants, high numbers as you can see out there, they found that at least one module was extremely successful. They have found that we need to be working on the growth plan that we've executed. We have the pleasure of receiving videos 6 months, a year later by the leaders that participate in the program, telling us how great the new projects have been and how much growth they have created and so on and so forth. So we have strong evidence, and I'm going to read a couple of quotes underneath, that what we're discussing is relevant, is tangible, and it changes the perspectives, it changes the mindset, it changes the capabilities that you bring forward. But also with respect to the average growth metrics, we're seeing an uptick. And we have to be careful here because when we report average values, I can tell you about cases, and I could excite you by cases of companies that have grown by 100, 150%, and also, but because they were in an industry that was growing overall. So how much of the growth was really their effort in a sense, versus companies that have been in a stagnant industry and they were able to grow by 5, 6% year on year, which is a massive effort for those who have been there, done that, and they understand how much you need to bleed sometimes to really cut across such difficult moments. It seems though that we are somehow offering the right support so that all those metrics seem to be going up, from profitability, for market share growth, from headcount growth in terms of growing the enterprise, and for annual sales growth. The headcount, although it, in some instances, might indicate cost from a business leader standpoint, let's not forget that it's an important economic prosperity index. creating jobs implies creating social and economic environments where us and our kids can live happily while this prosperity going forward. Nobody wants to be in a place where nobody else has a job. That is dire consequences from a social and economic standpoint. So as business leaders, we feel, and as a business school, we feel that it's important for us to sort of be contributing down that path. I will let you read in detail for a couple of seconds the quotes that you see down there. I'm going to focus on one, which is particularly interesting, as Tim Gilliam's has been a sort of more of a high-tech company that has come into the program. Although you can see we've worked with people that come from B2B contexts like Ishan Kamdar from the Comline, Tim coming out of the high-tech environment of Cambridge and London, but also Brent Hatfield, who has a very successful company in the on the space of retail and FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods. So we're agnostic in that respect. But I'm gonna actually stick with Tim's story, because in a sense, he is laying out the fact that coming into the program instigated hard thinking on those dimensions, on the dimensions that I started with. Hard thinking on how we can address them, hard thinking on how we can drive the maximum of our engine, of the way by which we're going to be doing business. Last but not least, over the last 6 months, we've also decided to develop a second digital program, which is more asynchronous. So there's no face-to-face or live online teaching of the sort that you're experiencing now. Or there is some business coaching, but it happens on very, very dedicated terms, in a sense, where part of the discussion that you see is coming forward through some online material we've created that can be accessible to the companies that they want to participate in that over a 2-month period. We're proud by the fact that this is supported by the UK government in their effort to sort of get companies to retain their productivity and at the same time recover potentially from the COVID pandemic that they have seen. The material is sort of following the same principles, although the Strategic Business Growth Program spends much more time going in depth and spends much more time on the business together real time. It's a different level of a program, but it can be an option for some of the organizations on the call today to think about in case they want to sort of participate in this. And we're also trying to understand through this program on how the virtual environment or some virtual knowledge, how effective it is vis-a-vis the knowledge that we're offering on a face-to-face. This is not possible by myself. I'm only a small part of this, despite the fact that I appear as the face of the program today, being able to discuss certain things with you as also the director, the academic director of the program. But a few gentlemen that are on the call, and I think you cannot direct them a chat immediately, but if you contact us through the media, the usual media website and whatnot, they will be responding to our calls. Andrew Hatcher and Kostas Ladas for the Strategic Business Growth Program as very experienced business coaches that have done that again and again and again with some of our companies, and they really understand the value of the program, and they support multiple companies across industries. And also Keiwan Agassi, who is on the digital program, the mastermind behind getting all this material planned and effectuated in a sense so that it can be helpful for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me, the Strategic Business Growth or the digital program sort of generic emails, or the contacts of the great team that has been put together to support you, because we really, really are excited at the Entrepreneurship Center on the prospect of continuing to support organizations such as yourselves. I'd like to thank all of you for taking your time on a Friday, which is usually the days where everybody starts thinking about weekends, and getting to listen to what we can offer and how we are willing to support and work with small and medium-sized organizations such as yourselves to enable resilience and growth. We hope to see a few of you on our programs, and I'd be delighted to have the opportunity to also do that face-to-face. We'll see. I cannot control vaccinations and how that race from the pharma industry is going. But until then, we'd be happy to host you also virtually, and we'd be happy to start a dialogue with your respective organizations. Many thanks from all of us here at the Entrepreneurship Center. And I'm not going to say we hope to see you on our flight soon, but we hope to see you on our program soon. Have a good afternoon and enjoy your respective weekends. Thank you.